The newest arena in all of Division I sports is right in your backyard. And to be inside, you don't have to break the bank. With tickets starting as low as $12, you can see St. Thomas basketballs and hockeys in the brand new $183 million multi-purpose on-campus Lee and Penny Anderson Arena for prices straight out of 20 years ago. Proud past and pricing, bright future, and national postseason eligibility for the Tommies. The stakes are high, the setting is state-of-the-art. Get your tickets today at TommySports.com.
Just a heads up to you folks sitting with a notebook and pen, MISCHKE, the new podcast here in Garage Logic Land, is now coming out twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. If you're in fact scribbling this down, Wednesday is kind of tough to spell. It's not like it sounds. You want to spell it W-E-N-Z, but that of course would be a mistake. Friday is spelled just like it sounds. You're going to be okay there, but Wednesday's a bugaboo. Let me tell you people, just a pain in the patootie. Jeez, it's hard.
You can run, you can hide, but in the end, I'll always find you.
There was so much blood.
I'm holding a book in my hand. America's Most Gothic. Haunted history stranger than fiction. From the Bram Stoker-nominated author team, the first book of its kind to investigate Gothic tropes that define American lore. Here's the hidden dark history of what frightens us and why. A lush and ghostly look at real people who lived and died amidst the trappings of the Gothic. Fog clinging to an isolated mansion, locked doors, forbidden rooms, whispers of murder and madness. You have stumbled into a Gothic tale. Yes, the enduring tropes of the Gothic, tapping into our fears, our anxieties, our forbidden desires, our unsettled dreams. This is all rooted in the experiences of real and tragic people, folks, who danced a macabre waltz with love and with death. A tour of true spectral sightings, disordered minds. But beware, this book will get under your skin. The haunted and haunting figures inside want it that way. Okay, it's October. It's a spooky time of year. I got a spooky affliction. It's all perfect. Got some sort of cough, cold thing going on here, people. Throat's a little wonky. Going to be tough doing an interview, but doggone it, the show must go on. I've always believed that. Come hell or high water, I'm not taking a week off. You taking a week off? We're rolling, but forgive my voice. It's going to get worse and worse during this interview, I promise you. My body is haunted by a specter, Anyway, let's get to the show. America's Most Gothic is the book. Haunted history stranger than fiction. Good old ghost stories, people. It's October. That's what we should be reading. There are two authors with this book, Leanne Renee Heber and Andrea James. I've got one of them, Leanna Renee Heber. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
You are self-described as a goth?
Yes, I am a goth.
What does that change, alter, inform? How does that present for you?
That's a great question. So I was always drawn to goth. Goth is a subculture, a mode of dress. Goth is a music style. It's an aesthetic style and it is a subculture. So I was drawn to this ever since I was a kid, but I didn't have a lot of ability to sort of self-style as a goth until I became a teenager with my own job and my own resources to be able to buy my own clothes, because my parents were not going to dress me solely in black like I wanted. So essentially, goth style is mostly black wardrobe. And it can be different kinds of styles. Usually there's something a little bit out of time about it. I was always drawn to the Victorian goths, corsets and floofy skirts and lace, dramatic. I mean, I'm an actress, so I was of course drawn to this sort of dramatic subculture. And the whole thing about goth, the whole reason why it appeals to me is it's a subculture that allows us to be delighted and almost whimsical about things that are kind of macabre. We have a healthy understanding of our own mortality. There can be beauty in decay. There can be beauty in age and old things. There's beauty in haunted halls. So yeah, we're drawn to spooky stuff. So the folks who are just drawn to spooky stuff very often will then also kind of be drawn to the goth subculture. Some of my earliest memories are of creating ghost stories on the spot for my local Girl Scouts and terrifying them and finding a great amount of power in that. So it's sort of just really, for me, when I found Edgar Allan Poe when I was somewhere between age 7 and 9, thanks to a very smart school teacher of mine who was like, "You're into the spooky stuff. Here, you're going to like this guy, Edgar Allan Poe. Here's a complete collection." It was like my security blanket. I would just carry around my complete collection of Edgar Allan Poe everywhere I went.
You write in the book, I think you quote somebody saying that the world is made up of people who have experienced ghosts and those who have not yet. And the idea there is that it's just a matter of time. Live long enough and you will have your experience. I have not had my experience yet. I've never had any problem believing any of the stories told to me that have been told to me by someone who felt they had a real experience with a ghost. It never seemed odd to me any more than it would seem odd to me that someone passed along that a table I'm sitting at is mostly empty space. They know that it's mostly empty space. Physicists tell me that, and I accept that. I don't have to go check their numbers or look how they figured that out. It doesn't seem odd that the world is odd. That doesn't seem strange to me. That seems about right. But I do find myself sometimes wondering, what really is the difference between a person who has these experiences and one who never does? There has to be a difference because they're not operating in different environments. I've been in plenty of old homes and I've been in plenty of the same places other people have who have experienced something supernatural, something that spoke to a mysterious other world. I wonder what it is that prevents me from having it. It certainly isn't a fear of it or a desire not to have the experience.
It's a sense. It's another sense. Some of us have really good eyesight. Some of us have a really good sense of smell. Some people have incredible hearing. People have sensitivities one way or another. And the sixth sense is just one of them. So some folks are just more naturally open to these things than others. Like you're just talking about the space at the table. I do think that ghosts are maybe on a slightly different physics plane than we are on. And I do think when you start thinking about the idea of things phasing in and out of a given space in a spectral sense, that sounds a lot like theoretical physics right there. So I don't think these two things are antithetical at all. We don't have the science for it yet, but I don't think that we will forever be in the dark about these things. Or maybe it is just something we can have a divine mystery about. And it just will be something we will not know until we ourselves are out of this corporeal plane.
You know, you talk about it as a sixth sense, but I honestly think with my lack of a sixth sense, I could still be standing next to somebody who is having the experience of lights going off and on, books falling out of a bookshelf, noises in all 5 rooms in the house, and there's no way I'm not also going to have that experience. That light is not going to remain on for me. Those books that are falling to the floor are not going to remain on the shelf for me, and all that stuff going on in the other rooms, which are real noises, are going to be heard by me if they're happening. Some of these things are so dramatic, you don't need a sixth sense.
Right. Right. And so you would just, in those cases, it's someone that's near to you that is a conduit for those things.
Well, I want to bring up an example, and I want to get into your book because there are some extraordinary stories here. But let's go with Helen Peabody.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce Helen Peabody to us.
She was the president of the Women's Female Seminary at what became the coeducational Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. That's my alma mater. And so there was a separate women's college, and she began serving in the 1850s, and she served there nearly 30 years. She ruled with a bit of an iron fist. She was very, very strict, and she was this domineering force. So her ghost lore became pretty evident even right after her passing because she was such a presence there. People kind of still felt her presence even after her corporeal form was gone. Now, when this college became co-ed and male students began staying in Peabody Hall as a dormitory, then things started to get a little bit more active. Things would move, books would fall, lights would go off, and people would feel her presence, and in some cases even pinning down boys who are being disrespectful. There was this concept of like, oh no, she's upset that there are men in her women's institution. There's a portrait of her in Peabody Hall, and she's just straightforward in her 19th century gown. Like, don't try me. I love that about her because I actually really like prickly people and sort of like difficult people in some ways, because I think they're kind of like what makes the world go round half the time, because they're the people that will get things done.
I wanted to tie this into my not having any special sense for picking up this stuff, and yet I'm convinced if I'd have hung out with these particular men, I'd have seen plenty. 2 male Peabody Hall roommates had heard the stories of Helen Peabody haunting their dorm and had already been advised by their RA not to speak disparagingly of this headmistress in front of her portrait. Now, the guys, as any guy I know would, took this as a challenge. They proceeded to do exactly what they were told not to do. Once rude diatribes in front of the picture had been dispatched, these 2 guys went back to studying. Over the course of the night, books crashed to the floor. Their lamp crashed to the floor. A thumping sound came from their wardrobe. The message light on their dorm room landline phone began flashing. Getting increasingly freaked out, the students checked their messages. Nothing. They unplugged their phones from the landline, tried to focus. The lamp crashed off the desk again. They turned on their phones only to find that the message light was flashing again after being unplugged. Unnerved, the roommates brought their situation to the RA, the one that warned them not to rile the headmistress. The RA called telecommunications to see if calls had been made to the dorm phone. Yes, 200 of them. They were able to access a message. It was a playback of the very conversation they'd had in front of Helen Peabody's portrait. Only when the 2 sincerely apologized to Helen Peabody's portrait did things settle down for them again. Now, I would have loved to have hung out with them. I would have loved to have been around them when they did this, been in their dorm room when they tried to study, stayed in the room all night with them. This is where I think I would have had some access with no sixth sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't hear enough of guys like me getting that kind of access. There's a house on a street in my town here that was notoriously haunted, and a newspaper reporter refused to believe this was possible, and to poo-poo this, he offered to spend a night there, and he was allowed to spend an entire night there. And he had a god-awful night. Everything that they had said happens in this house happened to him. Now, I don't know that he had a sixth sense. The fact that he was poo-pooing it, to me, says he hadn't had anything like this happen in his life. But it was so intense, the experience, that any yahoo, I think, would have experienced this. So here I sit at 63 years of age, looking for my first experience for no other reason than it would just add a wondrous new dimension to life for me, just as anything does, just as seeing the Grand Canyon does or the ocean.
Because hauntings are so personal and everyone's experience around them is so varied, and you have a range of skepticism and belief. And I totally understand skepticism. I think you should have skepticism first and foremost. Just because I am a believer does not mean I don't go into a space with skepticism, thinking, is someone in this space trying to run a game here? So when people ask me like what my advice is for opening up more to these things, it's very hard for me to tell them what that's going to be because it's so personal. And I try never to tell people what to believe. I don't proselytize about anything. In terms of like what I would recommend for you to experience these things, I think just keeping an open mind. Leave, like you're saying, a certain room for wonderment and being able to share in that wonderment one way or another. And at some point, when you get an invitation to a haunted place, then go ahead. Take folks up on it.
Stop right there. Did a rogue shopping cart escape and hit your ankle as your coffee exploded all over your face? Did the neighbor swing a backpack that knocked you into a bush, creating something called a face plant? Did a worker's ladder wobble, dump a bucket of paint on your head, send your cat flying through a plate glass window? Did your neighbor's runaway lawnmower chase you into a trampoline while your groceries scattered like confetti and your body bounced over a garage? Did your office chair collapse mid-spin, sending your laptop airborne, your colostomy bag tumbling into the hallway, making the secretaries scream? Did an exploding smoothie turn your sidewalk into a slip and slide, while a dog barreled into your chest, pulling his owner whose plastic doggy poop bag immediately fused with your cheek? Bradshaw and Bryant are personal injury attorneys who wrestle chaos for a living. Escalator wipeouts, icy sidewalks, shopping mall disasters, paint store avalanches. They take your disaster and they turn it into cold, hard cash and sweet justice. Call Bradshaw and Bryant today. Accidents happen, but missing your payday? Well, that's just criminal. Learn more at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. Dirt, grit, grime. It all thinks it's safe, but it isn't. It thinks it can hide, but it can't. American Pressure says so. They have wash-based pressure washer systems that don't just clean, they interrogate dirt. At American Pressure, they have cold water systems, hot water systems, whatever will make that filth squeal. At American Pressure, they have mobile wash systems that come at dirt like Bruce Lee on steroids. They have hydro-excavating tools that find secrets dirt didn't even know it was keeping. At American Pressure, they have custom pump and motor solutions that bark orders till filth obeys. American Pressure has undercarriage wash systems that uncover actual sins, and removes them. Have you entered the pressure washing world? American Pressure owns the pressure washing world. They don't just sell machines, they sell the impossible, the no way, the you can't be serious. American Pressure, it's not just cleaning, it's a full-on adventure in perfection. Sales, service, parts, find them. American Pressure. I had an experience that is bizarre and speaks to some of what we're talking about here. It's just that I never had the key experience that I would have been looking for. I purchased a house, and someone I know who had all sorts of sixth sense type experiences in their life drove by the house and told me when they drove by the house, they saw it, and then when they looked back as they passed it, it was gone. And I said, what do you mean it was gone? And they said, well, it wasn't really gone, obviously, but the fact that I had that experience of it being gone says something's afoot here, and it isn't good. Well, I hadn't moved in yet. Before I could move in, temperatures around these parts dropped quite a bit, and all the pipes in the walls in the house burst. The entire house needed to have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of work done. I asked this same person to come over to the house, and he told me there is the spirit of a young girl in that house, and she's not happy. Do you know the history of this house? I said, I do not. He said, find out. There was an old lady who lived on the corner who had been there for decades and decades, and I spoke to her, and I was stunned to learn that years and years ago, back in the 30s, a well-known pedophile lived there.
Yikes.
So now, not only do I have the pipes bursting, but I've got the spirit of a girl in there, if I'm to believe this guy, and I can only imagine what haunts her. The recommendation was made that I bring over a group of people to exorcise the bad spirits out of this house. On the night these people came over, all sorts of strange things had to happen. I had to remove photos from the wall. I had to do all sorts of things to prepare the house. Then they were there for quite a long time. Now, they saw not only the young girl, but they saw the guy. Now, I didn't. But there they were, seeing him while I'm there. And they're following the guy in particular around the house. So the guy is there and the girl is there. It's just bizarre, but the house had been repaired at this point. Everything was back. Thousands had been spent. It was back to normal physically. But you couldn't get the house to heat up. You could not get the house to heat up properly. And after that night, when they finally got rid of this guy in particular, they weren't working too hard to get rid of the girl. They didn't think that was their job. Their job was to get rid of this guy. And when he was gone, the house warmed up to 71 degrees. He then gave me, this guy who had first gone by and seen the house there, then not there, he gave me a doll that he asked me to leave in the house for the spirit of this girl, which I left there, and it would stay there as long as we had the house. So that was an experience that I witnessed, but the only actual thing that I experienced that seemed odd, that I actually felt, was I did feel that the house wouldn't warm up, and then it did warm up. That was my one and only experience. Meanwhile, these guys are dealing with some pretty wild stuff, including at one point chasing this spirit into a closet and doing all sorts of things outside the closet. It was really a wild night.
Sounds like it.
So anyway, when I have things like that happen, you can see why I don't automatically poo-poo all this stuff, because on some level, I am witnessing things occur, and another level I'm not. But I could sit for hours contemplating what the hell is really going on here. And by that I mean, even if all things are as they're presented, what the heck is the infrastructure of all this? You die, and then you have to hang out in some horrible place where you were abused, and you have to be with the spirit of the guy. I mean, the whole thing just is horribly twisted, and we don't know the answers, obviously. But it's not a very pleasant thing to contemplate. I like to think of death as an escape from this nonsense.
I definitely don't think that people are, or that spirits are necessarily tied to their pain. I don't think that the tragedies that we talk about, I don't think there's some sort of eternal unrest. I refuse to sort of countenance that someone who has been in pain is going to be sort of forever in pain. But what I do think that these things does become an imprint of the damage that was done. I think sometimes the imprint of the damage that was done is usually there to try to bring a certain amount of justice that didn't happen in life. And so for me, there's a certain amount of telling the stories of those who did have a difficult time, who were possibly abused, who were put in terrible situations, honor them and try to make them the focus of the story in a healing capacity for us, the living. and to be mindful of negative presences, past and present and future, and to try to be wary of those things. And you did feel the temperature change. That's a core ghost lore fundamental. When there is extreme paranormal presence in an area, temperature is one of the things that reliably, at least folklorically, in terms of like not just anecdotes, but anecdata, when you compile enough of these things, the idea of the cold spots and the temperature changes. That is a very common denominator in a lot of these stories. And so you did feel that. There is something that you felt. The rest of these things do go into the category of, I can't answer that. That one's above my pay grade of exactly what happened.
Let's go to your own experiences. I was really surprised, delightfully surprised in reading your book to come upon the Wabasha Street Caves in my very own hometown. I was even more surprised to learn that you weren't just reporting on it as a place that's haunted here in the United States, but you were reporting on it from your own experience.
I worked there. I love the Twin Cities. One of my side jobs was as a tour guide in the Wabasha Street Caves. And I specifically sought out that job because I love history. And tour guides are performers for the most part. You're telling a story. You're trying to keep people engaged in a story that you're telling. And so for me, that was the perfect job because I knew it was a haunted place and I trusted and believed that it was. And even if I had never experienced something ghostly myself there, I knew that the history of St. Paul was really fascinating because it's not something you would think of today as being a sin city, but it certainly was during the times of Prohibition because of a layover agreement that the police chief had saying, you know what, rum runners, folks who are running illegal speakeasies, whatever, you can do whatever you want to do. We're a stop on the rum running route from Canada over to Chicago. St. Paul's right there in that crux of the L there. So folks were allowed to do whatever they needed to do mob-wise, provided that there wasn't overt criminal activity loudly in St. Paul.
Yeah, and I would love it if we could just say that it was a guy saying, it's kind of unfair that we can't have booze. I'm going to allow people to skirt the law here, let liquor run a little bit more smoothly through this territory. But this guy pretty much said, open season outside of this town. Only in this town am I going to worry about crimes, which means you ended up with guys. A lot of people don't know this. They only know about the big guys, the guys like Dillinger. But the average yahoo knew about this rule too. They all knew. So you had these low-level guys. I had a relative, he lived to be 106. He got to school 1910, 1911, 1912. He got to school by jumping on the Black Maria, which would pass by his house, which was a horse-drawn paddy wagon taking people from the jail to the courthouse. He'd jump on the back as a way to get to school and visit through the bars with some of the criminals. He said to me that there were all sorts of just bozos taking advantage of this. And one guy at the local soda fountain would be there in the morning, and all the kids knew him, and they called him Bump 'em Over Bobby. Bump 'em Over Bobby. What he would bump over was banks. He would leave with an empty satchel in the morning, go to some town elsewhere in Minnesota, rob a bank, and come back and sit at the soda fountain in the evening with his full satchel of however many hundreds of dollars he was able to get. And he was just a low-level guy, but he loved this system the police chief had. It just delighted him. So, yeah, that was the world. Very odd world. But when you were at the Wabasha Street Caves, what was it known for? When you did the tours, what were people most fascinated by? What went on there that intrigued everyone?
Well, everyone was there to feel what it was like to be in an illegal place. So it still had the sprung dance floor and this historic interior of a cave that had been in the 19th century, a mushroom farming cave, and then became this illicit nightclub during the Prohibition era. And there was a back fireplace, and it was riddled with bullet holes. And that's what people came there to see. They wanted to see the remnants of the violence that was still there in the brick. And that all becomes kind of impersonal until you start really to think about the human bodies that would have been between the shooter and that wall. And that's That's what the boys taught me. And we called them the boys. We didn't know their names because, again, because they were trying to keep things out of notable and prosecutable crimes in St. Paul, all of this mob violence was very hush-hush. It's not that it didn't happen. It's just that it didn't get reported or folks didn't get arrested. Things didn't get investigated. There's an unknown, unnamed violence, and it was thought by all the guides we didn't have any other answers about any of this other than to think, okay, well, they must have been buried in the back caves. And we knew that there were some deliberate collapses that had happened over the years. Some were accidental and others were deliberate.
The boys are the ghosts, right?
The boys are the ghosts for us. That's what we called them. We called them the boys. And they would turn lights off and on all the time. We would turn things off and they would immediately go back on. Our closing time had to be 20 minutes. To turn off everything. And even so, the owner would be like, you guys left the lights on. And we're like, we didn't leave the lights on. We turned them off. When we were tour guides, once we got our patrons off out the door safely, then it was just only us. Just us and the ghosts. So we would always kind of like run that last, like we would always take that last clip after we turned everything off towards the front door at a bit of a run. But things would move, things would be displaced. We had these lovely easels that had these big period photographs to give you a sense of historic St. Paul. And they would inevitably be on the floor, even though there's no drafts in there. And we just would go about our day, and music would start. People would see figures in the mirror sometimes. And even the owners who were pretty skeptical about stuff still had a couple moments when there was like, I heard some stuff when there wasn't anything plugged in or on. Hearing jazz music from the Prohibition age, even though nothing was playing and nothing was even plugged in. Ambient music, ambient sounds. And then there was a day when I got a really nice $50 tip, and then it was not in my back pocket after I had folded it and meticulously put it in my back pocket. I had specifically folded it up and buttoned my back pocket. I had a private client bringing their company in. So it was like a corporate party that wanted to just get a tour of the cave as like a day out for the corporation. It was like General Mills or 3M or one of those. They gave me a nice tip, and I was a struggling actress at the time. I was just scraping by, and I was so excited about that $50 bill. And then I went to close up everything, and it was not in my pocket. And I had specifically folded it up and buttoned my back pocket. And I went everywhere. I retraced my steps 5 different times. Finally, I didn't know what to do. But one of the things that I had been talking about with other people who deal with haunted places is that sometimes you have to actually be interactive with the spirits of the place. Sometimes you just got to talk to the ghosts. And so I was like, boys, I know that money was your business, but I have to eat. Do you know how many packets of ramen noodles it's going to buy me? I am begging you, return the money. Because I didn't know what else to do. And so I made my one last round, and then something caught my eye over in the corner by the fireplace. And sure enough, I moved closer to the fireplace, and right there, stretched out as if it had never been folded, was my $50 bill right underneath the bullet holes in the fireplace. So I said, thank you, boys, for returning my money. You are gentlemen after all. And I started talking to the boys a little more regularly. I started interacting with them. I realized this was something that wanted attention. This was something that was a playful prankster that wanted interaction. And so I would tell them about my day. If it looked like I was crazy talking to myself, nobody was any the wiser. That changed how I thought about ghosts. There was a body between that wall and whatever happened that night. And I just had a certain empathy for it because I would see how people would get so entranced by looking at the bullet holes and wanting to reach out and touch these vestiges of that violence. And I'm thinking, yeah, we're so drawn to these narratives, but also let's not forget that there really were people that were at the heart of these things too.
Imagine this. It's 17 below zero. Your boiler's gone rogue. Your furnace is sulking. Your pipes, they have started plotting against you. Chaos reigns. But here's the thing. Minneapolis-St. Paul Plumbing, Heating, and Air has been taming chaos since 1918. That's well over a century of stopping rebellious boilers, whispering to grumpy old furnaces, calming unruly pipes. MSP has become over the years kind of the zookeepers of your home's climate. Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, they don't just fix it, they understand it, they anticipate it, they train it to behave. Other companies, they show up with a wrench, and you can hope for the best. MSP, they show up with a plan, with knowledge, with skill, with a smile, with over 100 years of experience, 100 years tucked under their belts. So when your home starts plotting against you, call MSP, Minneapolis-St. Paul Plumbing, Heating, and Air, because some things you just can't teach. You got to master them over time. MSP has mastered your comfort. It's coming. It's called winter. You gonna watch from the sidelines again, or are you gonna get in the game? EcoFun Motorsports just made getting in the game a whole lot easier. That's right, EcoFun Motorsports of Burnsville and Forest Lake has a dozen brand new 2024 and 2025 Yamaha snowmobiles just sitting there saying, "Take me, ride me." The Yamaha Transporter 800cc is a do-it-all, pull-it-all, blaze any trail snow master. It's being given away like candy on Halloween. Normally $15,500. Now just $9,500. $6,000 off? And 0% financing for 60 months through Yamaha Credit. It's like winter itself is begging you to ride. Don't let this season pass you by, people. Deep snow? This sled will conquer it. Ice house? This sled will pull it. Trails? Easy peasy. This isn't just a snowmobile, this Yamaha. It's your ticket to a winter that's thrilling, that's wild, that's unforgettable. Call, click, or ride over to EcoFun Motorsports in Burnsville or Forest Lake. Your Yamaha is waiting. It's your life. Blaze your own trail, people. Where's home now?
New York City.
And New York City is where you conduct tours now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I work for a company called Burrows of the Dead, which is founded by my co-author, Andrea James. Burrows of the Dead has been a wonderful company to work for. It is New York City's top-rated ghost tour company. I've been working there over 10 years now.
In New York, there must be just an unbelievable treasure trove of stories. I cannot imagine the wealth of ghost stories there must be in that town. But I will say, reading your book, I was most intrigued by the Dakota. I was really fascinated by the stories from the Dakota. Of course, for some listeners, the Dakota only means the building outside of which John Lennon was killed. But of course, so many celebrities over the years have lived there. I didn't know that the building was so rich in ghost lore, in stories of hauntings. I was struck by Lennon himself being fascinated by it. The idea that both Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono were fascinated when they moved in and when they lived there, fascinated by the stories of spirits in the building. After having several of their own experiences, they got so interested in it that they held a seance to inquire about previous tenants, specifically of their apartment. Lennon reported seeing a sorrowful woman wandering the halls, who he referred to as a crying lady ghost. Lauren Bacall, the great actress, was a Dakota resident. She had a premonition. This is fascinating, too. You talk about sixth senses. She had a premonition on December 8th, 1980, that something awful was going to happen. And she expressed it to the guard, to the doorman. And it was regarding the paparazzi gathered outside. There was this sense of foreboding. She was really concerned enough to bring it up. I think that's the powerful part, is that she actually brought it up. This gathering of fans outside, that there was something bad going to happen. And then, of course, later that evening, Lennon is murdered. But I did not know that there are many stories now about Lennon's own spirit haunting the Dakota.
It's sort of inevitable, I think, when there's a tragedy. The reason why I do talk about his spirit is because I start with Yoko Ono herself saying she saw him sitting all in white, radiant, almost luminous at the white piano, his white piano. He sat there. He reassured her everything was all right. He was interested in transcendentalist thought. He was interested in all kinds of metaphysics. And he just, I think, carried a bit of that wonderment into the other plane. And so, the very first ghost story starts with her. And I'm trying to write about this with all the respect and empathy that is. It is very, very difficult to be a famous person anywhere. New York makes it at least manageable because it is a city of anonymity. And it's why a lot of people seek out New York City, because you're surrounded by just millions of people. And so it's easier to just kind of blend in. And New Yorkers also just pretty much leave you to your own business. It's one of the things I love about the city. But I just think the idea of starting with this kind of loving haunting, there have been reports of people seeing his spirit kind of leading people into Central Park, because right across the street from the Dakota is the Imagine mosaic, which was a gift from Naples, Italy, after he was murdered. It's a beautiful mosaic that says Imagine on it. There's something melancholy about that, but also really beautiful about it. That's why I think ghost lore can be actually very reassuring. The idea that there is another side, and there's a lot of mystery about exactly what that entails. But I think we can take a certain amount of comfort out of a horrible, tragic situation, especially with someone who is internationally known and beloved.
It's strange to me because in so many haunting stories I've come across over the years, if there was some horrific, violent death, there's something about that haunting that speaks to the spirit not being comfortable, not being at peace, not being in an environment it necessarily wants to be in. And it has something to do with the awful way the person in the physical world was killed. It doesn't get much more awful than the way Lennon was killed. And yet there he is at peace at the piano. Almost makes you want to have Mark David Chapman visit the Dakota, see if he can have a ghost experience. Wonder what that would be like. I mean, there is sort of this sense of, why does Lennon, the murder victim, get to be at peace while all these other people all over the country with these violent deaths seem so not at peace?
I don't know that those are actual intelligent hauntings. I think a lot of the misery that you're describing is what would be known as a residual haunting, not an intelligent haunting. A lot of times the residual haunting is basically an echo of the violence or the horror that was done there. It's not necessarily a interactive spirit. Or if it is because there is some unfinished business there and the spirit itself can't let go of what was done to it. And I think it's a lesson for the living, too. We have to figure out if something bad has happened to us in our lives while we're alive, are we holding on to that forever, or are we going to let it go? We have to ask the same thing about the spirit world.
You mentioned in your book, and I don't know if you have this in your experience running tours in New York, you mentioned that asylums seem to really attract people who are interested in hauntings. Places for the mentally ill over the years, places that have been famously used for the mentally ill. You say that really is a hot spot, both for hauntings and for people wanting to go looking.
I steer personally very clear of these places. I don't need any reminder of anyone's precarious mental state at any point. I think there's a lot of that becomes almost unhealthy fascination. So Andrea is the one that ends up writing about those kinds of things, because I myself just find it kind of in poor taste to want to go into a historic insane asylum. I just think that we should have a slightly better relationship as a world with treating mental health with more empathy and gentleness.
Well, let me ask you this. If, in fact, an asylum for the mentally ill was a place that had a particular intensity to the experiences, to the haunting experiences, and someone was interested in that in life, that's just an area they like to explore, a good faith exploration. They could even visit with compassion, but the idea was they wanted to learn more, the way anybody would want to learn about another realm if they found access points. Couldn't one have a good faith curiosity going there?
Yes, as long as they're respectful about it, that's all. You would very much want to do your research. If the historic building is treating it like it's some haunted house, scary attraction, if people are making it lurid rather than wanting to share the history, then that's not something I would want to support. That becomes something where you're part of the problem, not the solution.
Right. "48 minutes. Boom, chuck-a-boom. 48 minutes, chuck-a-boom, chuck-a-boom. 48 minutes, that's all it takes. 48 minutes, for God's sakes. 48 minutes free. That's what Josh Arnold is offering. 952-925-5608. Stop pretending you know what your money is thinking, where it's going, what it's planning. Stop letting your retirement wander off like a lost tourist in a city it's never been to. You need a money man. You need the maestro of money. You need your meal ticket to happier financial times. Josh Arnold gives you 48 minutes on the phone for free. Talk to him. See if he isn't what your financial world needs right now. Josh has been turning confusion into confidence for over 40 years. He doesn't just manage your investments. He choreographs them. IRAs, 401ks, mutual funds. Each one a soloist in the symphony of your future.
Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC, a security and investment advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk. Tommy MISCHKE is a paid endorser.
Folks, at the Wellshire Memory Care Center in Bloomington and Medina, they offer love. Quite a thing, really, to offer. Love. It comes with specialized care for Alzheimer's and dementia patients who want to feel, well, loved. Loved by a staff that has mastered an understanding of the 4 stages of memory care. That's why the Wellshire is broken up into 4 quadrants. The facilities include beautifully landscaped courtyards, engaging activities, music therapy, a wellness center, a movie room, a library, barber and beauty services. It's an incredibly safe, beautifully well-run, nourishing environment. Tour the Wellshire before deciding where to place your loved one. You'll be most grateful you did, believe me. The Wellshire. Let me just pass along just the very brief portion of your book that addresses this, because it's the way you address it I'm fascinated by. The haunted asylum is one of the staples of American ghost lore, for good or for ill. Some think the whole idea atrocious, exploitive. Others think there may be a place for ghost tours of former mental hospitals as a way to confront and metabolize our own fears. The famed Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia threads the needle by offering both historic tours and haunted experiences, and disallowing any discussion of the paranormal on the history tours out of respect. I love this next sentence. I can tell you with a fair amount of certainty that the haunted experiences float the historical ones financially.
Yes, people want to be entertained. They don't necessarily want the truth of history. That is a location that is trying to do both. That is trying to do both things and trying to conduct this very difficult balance. Now, I have to say that that whole section, Andrea wrote that section, and I'm very grateful for her. I'm very grateful that she did that. We didn't realize when we were co-authoring this, we separately wrote stories that we were really, really passionate about and gravitated towards. We did not intend to be writing about the other person's like phobias, but we ended up addressing, like, she is terrified of like spirits at the crossroads. So like my whole motorcycle ghost chapter and all of that stuff, that was like, I was unwittingly kind of taking on one of her big fears. The motorcycle ghost that none of us thought we were going to summon, and we saw a light come at us after flashing our lights 3 times.
Okay, can you tell briefly that story?
We just thought the motorcycle ghost of southwestern Ohio was following all these urban legend tropes, and none of us thought this was going to really happen. None of the 4 of us in this car thought we were going to go and flash our lights and see anything. We just were going to do it because we were bored in southern Ohio and there was nothing to do. It was a bright moonlit night, so bright. We went to this very deserted road. It was just barren fields on either side of us and this really steep hill. And there was an old kind of dilapidated house at the top of this hill. And the ghost lore had been, and it had changed through the years. Like one account I heard said it was like, a motorcycle ghost from the 1950s. Another one said it was from the 1970s. All I know is that it was important that it wasn't recent. He evidently either had a fight with his girlfriend or was rejected in a proposal, or the woman in question took another lover. Again, all of these things are very common in urban legend. And he went with his motorcycle away from that place and down this very steep hill and crashed. And so if you were to flash your lights 3 times, then the motorcycle ghost would appear at the top of the hill and its light would come towards you. And we just were like curious about this whole thing. And we tried it. My friend Erin in her red Jeep, she pulled over to the side of the grassy berm, and it was at the base of this hill. So there was a very steep hill. Southwestern Ohio is full of steep hills and sharp curves. It's some dangerous country roads, right? So we're noticing just how steep this hill was. And Erin flashed her lights 3 times. And then within like 10 seconds, there was a misty white light that appeared in the shape of a headlight that started at the top of the hill and started coming down the hill. And all of us are closing our eyes and opening our eyes and closing our eyes and opening our eyes. We're asking each other if we see it. We all see it. Then as it gets closer, we're freaking out a little bit more, and then it dissipates. But then in the same time frame as it would have been if it had passed us as an actual vehicle, there was a loud crash on the top of the car, like a car wreck. It sounded like a rending of metal. And I've never screamed so loud in my life. It is a wonder that none of us fainted. We looked all around us. We looked to see somebody had to be punking us. Somebody had to be waiting for this kind of stuff. But like, who would sit and wait at the top of a hill indefinitely for, like, we didn't plan this. We didn't check in with anybody like before we went and did this. And there's nobody in the fields. It was just fields all around us in this bright moonlit night. And my friend Erin just tore away, spitting gravel, tore away until we were 20 miles before we even had access to a gas station, pulled over into this parking lot and got out to look and see what the top of the roof, because it had to have left a mark, and there was nothing there. And we were like, what made that noise? What? I don't know what to tell you. For me, I consider warnings from the spirit world to be heeded. So for me, that was a warning. That was, don't go messing around with stuff. We never went back there. We were like, that was definitive. That was a get out. And we did.
Yeah, there is that variety right there. The one that is, don't mess around. I would love to send you a podcast I did that is the don't mess around kind. It's the strangest of all the stories I've ever encountered. And in this particular case, I'm the only one, I believe, it's been told to in the media. I don't know that it's in any book. And I interviewed multiple people involved. I had to track them down. It had happened when these people were teenagers, and they're adults now, and I had to track them down for a story. They hadn't been in touch with one another over the years, and I interviewed them all separately. It's a story I still think of at least twice a year, and it's definitely in the category of a much larger version of those college students messing with that portrait of Helen. In this particular case, it was messing with a force way, way more powerful. And why on earth they continued to mess with it, I don't know. But the experiences were absolutely otherworldly, and I've never heard anything like it. I will send it to you. But I think of the other end of the spectrum. There's lovely John saying everything's all right, sitting at the white piano in the Dakota. There's the happy side of it. I want to wrap up with you. I want to let people know again the title of the book, America's Most Gothic: Haunted History, Stranger Than Fiction. Leanna Renee Heber and Andrea Janes are the authors. The last thing I wanted to bring up, I was going to bring it up when we were talking about the Dakota, just because for me, it was just a moment in reading the book that was just so sad, and it's this silly little small moment, but it has to do with the Dakota. You write in America's Most Gothic, this is about people living at the Dakota. There were many Hollywood stars, and their reputations would make their own impression on the building. Boris Karloff, to his extreme sadness, couldn't give out candy on Halloween. Kids were too afraid of Frankenstein's monster living in the basement to approach him.
It's so sad and true, and it just breaks my heart. But I just, at least, if nothing else, just wanted to kind of give him that shout out, because I think he's a brilliant actor, and I think he made such an important contribution to our Halloween season. And but he just was too good. He was too good.
First of all, you learn Boris Karloff is in the basement of the Dakota and that he's open to trick-or-treaters. Now, I would probably go down there with some trepidation because might be thinking, what's Boris got planned? But the actor, Boris, just wanted to probably give out some candy, and kids were too afraid. The only other time I've encountered something in this area, William Burroughs in Lawrence, Kansas, was sort of a scary guy. He was one of the beat poets, but he was kind of a scary guy. I think he was a little bit on the goth side.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah.
And people would trick or treat at his house, but he would be there giving out the candy, and they would not know what they were getting into there. But that and visiting Boris in the basement of the Dakota for some candy would have been something I would have loved to do at some point in life. But I did feel so badly for poor Boris Karloff that no kids came knocking on his door.
It's hard because when you want to participate and have fun in spooky season, but you yourself have been part of the spooky career, it can sometimes be a double-edged sword there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for your good work on this book, as well as your partner, Andrea Janes, both of you, America's Most Gothic. Leanna, thank you again.
This has been just so delightful, and I'm so grateful for your time and engagement with this. This book is really a calling for me, and I'm so grateful to be able to talk about it. So thank you for being so lovely. You've been such a joy. I hope we can do this again. I'll keep you posted on future work.
Please do.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's going to do it for this show. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to speaking with you next time. It's October. The subject matter changes, as it should. I believe in one of the next couple of shows, we're going to be talking about bats. Bats! Bats! I like bats. Until we meet again, you people be kind to yourselves. You're decent souls, all of you. Treat yourself that way. So long.